Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Maybe even your own family? It's a pain that cuts deep, leaving scars that can last a lifetime. We often think about revenge, or just trying to forget and move on. But what if there's another way? What if the most devastating moments of our lives are actually part of a much bigger, more beautiful plan? Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic stories ever told. The story of Joseph and his brothers from the book of Genesis. It's a saga filled with jealousy, betrayal, and incredible hardship. But more than that, it's a powerful testament to how even the most malicious acts can be woven into a tapestry of redemption and blessing. This isn't just an ancient tale. It's a story that speaks directly to the broken parts of our own lives. Our story begins with a young man named Joseph. He was the 11th of 12 sons, and to say he was his father's favorite would be an understatement. His father, Jacob, even gave him a special, beautiful, ornate coat of many colors. This coat wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of favor, setting Joseph apart from his older brothers. As you can imagine, this didn't go over well. His brothers were already simmering with jealousy, and Joseph, in his youthful innocence or maybe a bit of arrogance, didn't help things. He started having dreams. Not just any dreams, but vivid, symbolic dreams where he was destined for greatness. In one, he and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in a field, and suddenly his brother's sheaves bowed down to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars were all bowing down to him. Joseph shared these dreams with his family. He probably thought they were amazing, a glimpse into a glorious future. But to his brothers, it was the final straw. They heard it as pure arrogance. "You think you're going to rule over us?" They sneered. Their jealousy morphed into a deep, consuming hatred. They couldn't even speak a kind word to him. The family, which should have been a source of safety and love, was becoming a hotbed of resentment. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were tending the flocks far from home. When they saw him approaching from a distance, wearing that infamous coat, their hatred boiled over. This was their chance. They plotted. "Here comes the dreamer! Let's kill him and throw him into a pit. We'll tell our father a wild animal attacked him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest brother, had a flicker of conscience. He convinced them not to shed Joseph's blood directly. Instead, they stripped Joseph of his beautiful coat, the symbol of their father's love and their own jealousy, and threw him into a dry, empty well, leaving him to die. Imagine the terror and confusion Joseph must have felt. One moment he's on an errand for his father. The next, he's at the bottom of a dark pit, betrayed by his own brothers. While they sat down to eat, a caravan of traders heading to Egypt passed by. Judah, another brother, had an idea. Why let Joseph die for nothing? They could sell him as a slave and make a profit. It was a cold, calculated decision. So they pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. To cover their crime, they dipped his coat in goat's blood and presented it to their father, Jacob. The sight of the torn, blood-stained robe broke Jacob's heart. He was convinced his favorite son was dead and mourned for years, inconsolable in his grief. The brothers had gotten rid of Joseph, but they had poisoned their own family with a terrible lie. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken to Egypt, a foreign land where he knew no one and had nothing. He was sold to Potiphar, a high-ranking official, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Here, the story could have ended, with Joseph living and dying as an unknown slave. But the Bible tells us something crucial. The Lord was with Joseph. Because God was with him, Joseph excelled at everything he did. He was trustworthy, diligent, and capable. Potiphar noticed this, and soon put Joseph in charge of his entire household. Everything prospered under Joseph's care. From a pit of despair, he had risen to a position of great responsibility. It seemed like things were finally turning around, but another trial was just around the corner. Potiphar's wife took notice of the handsome young man running her household. She tried to seduce him, day after day. Joseph, committed to honoring both God and his master, refused her advances. He told her, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin?" against God. One day, she became more aggressive, grabbing his cloak as he tried to flee. Left hold in his garment, she was furious and humiliated. To protect herself, she twisted the story. She screamed and accused Joseph of attacking her, using his cloak as false evidence. When Potiphar came home, he believed his wife's lie and, in a rage, threw Joseph into the royal prison. Think about this injustice. Joseph did the right thing. He fled temptation, and his reward was to be thrown into a dungeon. He went from being a favored son to a slave, then from a trusted manager back down to a prisoner. It would have been so easy for him to become bitter, to curse God, to give up all hope. He had been wronged by his brothers and now by his master's wife. Yet even in the darkness of that prison, the story repeats a familiar line. The Lord was with Joseph. God's favor was still on him. Soon, the prison warden saw Joseph's integrity and put him in charge of all the other prisoners. Just as he had in Potiphar's house, Joseph managed the prison affairs flawlessly. While there, he met two of Pharaoh's former servants, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. Both had troubling dreams. And Joseph, with God's help, interpreted them. He told the cupbearer he would be restored to his position in 3 days, and the baker that he would be executed. Everything happened just as Joseph had predicted. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph made a simple request. When things go well for you, remember me and mention me to Pharaoh, so I can get out of this place. But once restored to his post, the cupbearer forgot all about the Hebrew man in the dungeon. 2 more long years passed for Joseph in that prison. Forgotten, abandoned, waiting. Then, Pharaoh himself had 2 disturbing dreams that no one in his court could interpret. He dreamed of 7 fat, healthy cows being eaten by 7 thin, ugly cows, and 7 full heads of grain being swallowed by 7 withered heads of grain. It was then that the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Joseph was rushed from the prison, cleaned up, and brought before the most powerful man in the world. Pharaoh told him the dreams. Joseph was clear, I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. He explained that the dreams were a message from God. There would be 7 years of incredible abundance in Egypt, followed by 7 years of devastating famine that would ravage the land. But Joseph didn't just interpret the problem. He offered a solution. He advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the collection of grain during the good years, storing it up for the years of famine. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's wisdom, recognizing it came from God, that he said, "Can we find anyone like this man? One in whom is the Spirit of God?" In a stunning turn of events, Pharaoh appointed Joseph, the former slave and prisoner, to be the second most powerful person in all of Egypt. He was put in charge of the entire project. At 30 years old, after 13 years of suffering, Joseph went from the prison to the palace. He was given Pharaoh's signet ring, fine linen clothes, and a gold chain. He married and had 2 sons. During the 7 years of plenty, he worked tirelessly, storing up massive amounts of grain, more than anyone could count. Then, just as he had foreseen, the famine hit. It wasn't just in Egypt. It was severe in all the surrounding lands, including Canaan, where Joseph's family lived. Back home, Jacob and his sons were running out of food. Here and there was grain in Egypt. Jacob sent 10 of his sons, all except his youngest, Benjamin, to go and buy some. So the brothers traveled to Egypt. And who did they have to go to in order to buy grain? The powerful Egyptian governor, who was in charge of the entire supply. They came before him and bowed down, their faces to the ground. They had no idea they were bowing to the very brother they had sold into slavery 2 decades earlier. But Joseph recognized them immediately. His childhood dreams were coming true right before his eyes. Instead of revealing himself, Joseph decided to test them. He spoke harshly, accusing them of being spies to prove their innocence. They told him all about their family, about their old father and their youngest brother, Benjamin, who had stayed behind. They even mentioned a brother who was no more. Joseph demanded they bring Benjamin to Egypt to prove their story, and he kept one brother, Simeon, as a hostage. The brothers were terrified. They believed this was God's punishment for what they did to Joseph all those years ago. Their guilt had been haunting them. They returned to their father Jacob, but he refused to let Benjamin go, fearing he would lose another beloved son. But as the famine worsened, they had no choice. Judah, the same brother who suggested selling Joseph, stepped forward and personally guaranteed Benjamin's safety, offering his own life in his place. This showed a profound change in his character. When the brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin, Joseph was overcome with emotion, seeing his full brother for the first time in years. He arranged a feast for them, but his final test was yet to come. As they were leaving, he had his personal silver cup secretly placed in Benjamin's sack of grain. Shortly after they left, he sent his guards to catch the thief. When the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, the brothers were devastated. They tore their clothes and returned to the city, falling at Joseph's feet. Joseph declared that Benjamin would have to stay and become his slave. This was the ultimate test. Would they abandon Benjamin, just as they had abandoned him? But they were not the same men they were 20 years ago. Judah stepped forward and gave an emotional speech. He explained that their father would die of grief if Benjamin didn't return. He then offered himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. "Let me stay here as your slave," he begged. "But please, let the boy go back." Seeing this genuine change, this selfless love, Joseph could no longer control himself. He sent all the Egyptians out of the room and, through his tears, he finally revealed himself. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers were speechless, frozen with fear and shock. The man they had betrayed was now standing before them with the power of life and death. But instead of vengeance, Joseph offered grace. He said, "Do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here." And then he spoke one of the most powerful sentences in all of Scripture. "It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." He saw God's hand in everything. The betrayal, the slavery, the imprisonment was all part of a divine plan to position him to save his family, and indeed the whole region, from starvation. He forgave his brothers completely and urged them to bring their father and their entire families to Egypt to live under his care. This story is a beautiful illustration of forgiveness and redemption. It shows us that no matter what others do to us, no matter how dark our circumstances seem, God is at work. He can take the most evil intentions and the most painful situations and weave them into something for our good and for His glory. Joseph's story encourages us to trust in God's sovereignty, to choose forgiveness over bitterness, and to look for His purpose even in our pain. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through Joseph's life. If this story touched you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content that explores the powerful truths found in these timeless stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.